Welcome to another episode of Home Sweet Home. My name is Rod McCall.
And I'm Scott Nichols. All right. So, wow. Just
exciting times.
Yes. I mean, we're coming up on our, the end of the school year.
Praise the Lord.
It's awesome. Summer's coming. I mean, lots of fun things.
Do we have to wait for summertime, though, to get to fun times here?
No, there's always fun times, right? Weekends always. Hey, so, in the past, what was it? Maybe a month ago, I was at, a work thing. We were at a professional development.
You do work things?
I do work things occasionally, like actual, my regular job. Not
okay.
We don't get paid for this. So
no, we
I
pay to do
something
this.
to get the food, right? We actually pay money for this. So, so I was at a professional development, and I ended up sitting next to one of our previous guests.
Yes. This will teach me not to skip sessions.
That's right. So anyway, I was sitting next to one of our previous guests, Laura Mauldin, and we got talking about the potential to have another episode, have her on again. It's been 6 months. Can you believe that?
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. And so, we want to, we talked about, getting her back on the show and maybe talking about soccer a little bit.
I love soccer.
Cause, she loves soccer, and she,
I don't know. Does she have a background in soccer?
We were picking our favorite sports, and I didn't pick soccer, and she was like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "Okay, you know what? I like soccer, right?" So I went with soccer.
Okay.
She convinced me that it was great. But seriously, like I've been watching, up to that point, Ted Lasso, right? Like a lot of people have.
Yeah.
And, I just thought, what a great show, and how they worked soccer into being such an inspirational, kind of a tool in life. And, the great things that he did with it as a coach, and the people that learned things out of the game. And I thought, I don't know a lot about soccer other than that it usually ends in like 0-0 or 1-1 or 1-0. Like it's never like 35-7, right? Like,
no.
I don't know a lot, but I've gotten to, appreciate it a lot more, given that a lot of our colleagues like soccer. And, through that day, we had a great time kind of talking about soccer a little bit. So I wanted to welcome back, Laura Mauldin, and, give her a chance that we can talk today about some soccer and like its effects on kids, and how its positive effects, on kids. And so, Laura's a teacher and a soccer coach, and so she's got a lot of expertise in this.
Yeah, I would hope so at this point. No, yeah. Thank you guys for having me on the show. I'm really excited.
Yeah. So, families today are having their kids play a lot of sports.
Mm-hmm.
Just seems like their schedules are crazy busy, and I'm sure that this relates to a lot of other sports, although we'll primarily talk about soccer, or like we have a lot of listeners actually in Europe, so that would be football, right? But we'll keep using the term soccer, and
because we're Americans.
So, but this has I think a lot of areas in a child's life that are relevant, and so we can start off with whichever part of this you want to talk about, as far as its benefits.
Yeah, I think it has a ton of benefits. I think a lot of sports do. Putting your kids in sports is definitely something that you want to do, primarily just because of the health benefits.
Right.
Right. And so specifically, it starts working on their gross motor skills, right? So you're working on them running, the jumping, the kicking, all of those actions, whether it's in soccer or basketball or any sport.
Sure.
Starts to get your kids coordinated, right? And then as they grow up, then they can start working on their fine motor skills, the dribbling, the passing, the foot positionings, And so actually, if you look at the United States Soccer like coaching website, they have different levels of gross and fine motor skills that change based on the age group of the child. And you can see the development from a U7 all the way up to a U18 and how those kind of change and develop. So it's definitely more than just, a way to throw your kids out there. You're actually developing their physical health. Yeah.
Well, I know that when Eric was little, I want to say 3.5, maybe 4, we put him in soccer tots. Because with exactly what you're saying, with me as a dad, he was cursed to have no athletic skills. So I wanted to help him out a little with coordination and balance and all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of fun for him, watching him, play indoor soccer.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we wouldn't really call it. It was more goofing around, but still with soccer as the premise.
Yeah, I my grandson, he's going to be 6. So, and he's been playing soccer for 2 or 3 years, right? So, and I had no idea that you could actually start kids playing these sports that young. Certainly before we moved to Texas, there wasn't as big of a push for this kind of stuff out in Texas. Here, we like to get our sports started early. Absolutely. And turn people into professionals as fast as we can.
We have 3-year-olds who are professionals today. So.
Sure. So he likes playing the soccer, and it's been fun to watch him go from that tiny little field that they do for the youngest group to kind of a larger one. And I presume that being 6, he might get a little bit bigger field than he even had last year. But it's been fun to see him and the skills that you talk about, right? Him being able to control the ball a little bit and know where he's going and try to get it to maybe another player. Right. I mean, so there's a lot of cooperation and things that I'm seeing him be able to do. And I think his mom was like, I don't know if I want to do the soccer anymore. Might want to do something else. And he actually asked to do soccer. So he's been doing some stuff at School of Rock, which is kind of cool. But he was like, I'd rather do soccer. So that was kind of neat. I think that maybe the teamwork aspect of it, or just the being outside. But there's definitely some health benefits to that. I mean, the exercise is good. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think you kind of talked about the cooperation and the teamwork aspect. It definitely teaches kids how to communicate and cooperate, right?
Right.
And so there's also on the framework for United States Soccer, it talks about the social and the cognitive things that they're learning at the time, right? So if you look at the U7 framework, they're just trying to communicate, hey, pass me the ball. Little things like that.
Right.
And then as they grow up, which you're working with the high school kids now, it's, well, how do we communicate when things are really frustrating, or when there's there's hundreds of people in the stands yelling your name and you have to stay focused on what we're doing. And so the growth from a U7 all the way to a U18, just as far as cooperation and communication skills, it's a great outlet for that.
That's awesome.
Do you think it has any impact? I mean, not being involved a lot in sports except as a fan, do you think it has any impact on self-confidence?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think it teaches kids how to regulate self-confidence, because I think within any sport, you can be humbled very quickly. But it also allows you to gain self-confidence, right? And so it kind of goes both ways, right? How do you handle when you're really, really good? And can you bring others along with you? But then also, how do you handle when I'm not the best kid on the team, or I'm still working as hard as everyone else, and I'm not as confident? So it kind of goes on both sides of the coin, just how you handle the sport mentally, and that can transfer into life skills.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, you talk about it being relatively easy to learn because it's kind of scaffolded, right? So you pay attention to fundamentals down here, and then you work your way up to, some of the more complex plays or things like that. One of the things I found interesting about it is I watched Ted Lasso, because I don't really understand soccer. I mean, I understand it a lot more now that I've watched it, right? But I still don't get offsides. I'm as confused as he was.
Okay.
But the sport itself, like I watch a lot of American football, right? Which has plays that everything's very timed and everybody runs a particular route and the play lasts 30 seconds and we're done, right? And it's just, soccer is so different in that it's just continuous. And so you have to make faster adjustments, it seems. And so I just wonder, like, that must be really good for the kids to be able to see and analyze and adjust quickly and think about like maybe several plays they have in their heads that they might apply at a given time. And so it seems much more complex while also being maybe somewhat more simple. It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, if you're talking about like the actual tactics behind soccer as a coach, you want to give kids what I call like a framework, right? Like I want to give you the foundation of the house. And then within the house, I want you to decorate it and be creative on however you want to be. And so I think that lends kids to, we don't really have plays that we give them, but we give them moments of like, okay, you're in the moment of attacking. What are some ideas that you can do in this moment? And so I think that lends kids to creativity. But the cognitive side of it as well is they're having to process their opponent's movements, their movements, and their teammates' movements at such a quick rate. And so cognitively, I mean, they're moving rapidly at all times. Right. And there's actually a study done that talks about, I can't remember the name of it, but when you get an athlete and you put them in the workforce, it's such an easier transition because they're used to having to adapt on the fly.
Right.
So it's pretty cool.
It feels like playing chess with, 9 people or something or whatever. How many people are on the field?
There's 11 on both teams.
So, but that's what it feels like, right? It feels like chess is like that, but you're only one person. So it's, it's different.
Right.
But here you have to cooperate with everybody. So it's pretty neat.
Well, anything that you can do, I think that can help anybody speed up their ability to adapt, problem solve, overcome, work with other people. I mean, these are all skills that you have to have. When you're a little kid, you're still doing it in school, even at elementary school, move up through middle school, high school, and then, once you leave school and into the real world, all those are necessary attributes that the more experience we can have, hot diggity dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a poster that I love that it says like, kids in sports become CEOs one day, because it's true. Like there's so much evidence that if you play a sport and you go throughout college doing that, all of the lessons that you're learning are really transferable into the real world and into real life. So
that brings me to one of the things about things that we see kids dealing with, right? And I know that you work with Hope Squad as well. And so one of the things that we hear all the time from kids, right? And when I was a kid, we never used this word, but when we always hear from them, but it's got my anxiety up and I'm really anxious and they have trouble coping with a lot of things. And I just wonder, do you find that because they're having to play under these time constraints and this pressure and these things that they're having to deal with as they have to, in the moment, address the changes that are taking place on the field, do you think the players are actually better off in their coping skills than somebody who doesn't play a sport or doesn't play soccer?
That's a hard question because there's definitely two answers for it. And I think it really depends on the kid, right? Like for some of our kids who maybe struggle with anxiety, soccer is a way for them to get away from it, right?
Sure.
Because they don't understand that how they're coping in a game is similar to how they can cope within life, right? So there's kids right now that I'll talk to and I'll be like, hey, what you're doing on the soccer field right now of having to adjust and adapt when you're under pressure is the same thing that you have to do in life.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's other kids that they can get anxiety from that time constraint and from that pressure of the game. And so you have to work them through are you putting pressure on yourself, or like, where's this pressure coming from?
Right.
And normally it's like, oh, well, I just have to perform for me. I have to perform for me. And I'm like, well, we're not putting that on you. Like, we just want you to go out and do what we know you can do.
Right.
So I think it's like in anything, right? Like, anxiety can come from a multitude of things. It's just, soccer's a really good outlet to teach kids how to handle it.
Mm.
Yeah.
That's always good, because whatever, one of the things that I like here at school that we've done is push the idea of get involved, do something, join a group, join a club, join a team, whatever it is. There's something there we can do. And it ties into what you're saying there. When you have that ability to work with other people, well, now you're having to develop a lot of those skills that come to be beneficial to us as adults.
Right.
And the more opportunity that we have to work with others, to problem solve, to deal with pressure, to deal with all these things, is, well, wonderful.
Yeah.
So get your kid in soccer.
Yeah. Well, and like you just said, something I always think about is, you look at all my best friends' weddings and we're all the bridesmaids. Well, we're not going back talking about, oh man, in this game, we were really under that pressure. We're looking back on the community that we built through the love of something. And so I think that's what you really want kids to take away from, is whether it's soccer or basketball or theater, everything has pressure. Everything has, some sort of anxiety that can be put on it. But how do you collaborate with the people around you to push through that? I think is really important.
Yeah. I marched in drum corps, years and years and years and years ago.
Last week?
No.
20 minutes ago.
Lots of years. So, and that's a similar kind of a thing, right? So there's pressure of the performance, of the competition, of the, learning the music, getting it right, not screwing up when you're on the field, all those things. And I imagine it's similar for sports.
Yeah.
In fact, DCI likes to call it the major league, for, music. But, you talked about how these players, the athletes, become, CEOs, leaders of corporations, leaders of, companies that are producing. And, I would imagine that handling loss and setbacks and, bouncing back from things and, learning to respect others and adults and, elders and all that, can play into that.
Right. And I think that the biggest thing that sports teaches kids is how to deal with the process. Right. So like, even if we're just looking at this season, if we started our first game off playing as good as we're supposed to be playing, well, that's probably not great, right? You can't maintain that,
Sure.
So something that we preach to our kids a lot is, what does the process look like? Like, if we're losing a game, but we're playing better than we played the last game, that's an improvement in the process, right?
Yeah.
And so, it teaches kids that even in setbacks of life, how do you handle that, and how do you continue to inch your way up?
Yeah.
Even when it's maybe not going your way all the time.
Well, that's like, as a teacher, I like to say that if you start out my course just getting A's, like, you're not actually learning anything.
Right.
Right. You're probably not learning very much, at least. If I can throw a challenge at you that you struggle with, that's where you learn. Right.
Right.
And so, I imagine it's the same on the field.
Well, and I even told my kids today, I ran a practice and I ran a drill that we do all the time. And before we started the drill, I said, what is the first coaching point I'm going to say? And they were like, oh, you're going to want us to scan what's around us. And I was like, okay, so if you know that going in, how can you better yourself to where that's not my first coaching point, and to where I'm making you better in a different way? And I think that's important for kids to hear, because it's like, it makes them think about, what are my actions that I'm doing in this drill, and how can I make myself better? And that's something that you have to do every day, right? Like, what am I doing as a teacher in my job that I know I should be doing better at? How can I improve?
Right. Now, I know that, in our jobs as teachers, we like to have fun.
Yes, of course.
Between every class period, I like to have fun. I like to have fun in my class with students. You want to have an enjoyable day, right?
Well, I always try to tell them, Monday is fun day Monday. I haven't had any takers though on that.
That's like a dad joke, and you're pretty good at those.
I am. I won't tell you where I keep all my dad jokes though.
Oh. So, but fun, right? We got to balance fun with discipline, with responsibility, right? Like we get to have fun at our jobs, but we also have to, be serious about a lot of things too. And so I wonder, how that works out, especially in an environment where like a lot of people are like, well, this is just for fun, right? Why, like there's some places where they're like, don't even keep score. It's like,
we don't do that.
So I know we don't do that, but right. Like, I just, how do you balance the fun and the discipline at the same time?
Yeah. So, in the United States soccer framework, I'm getting my D license right now. That's why I'm referring back to that so much. But they surveyed a bunch of kids. I don't know the exact number, but the highest indicator of retaining kids in sports is fun. Yeah. And number 48 is winning games. So that's it's very interesting.
Wow.
But one of the other top indicators was discipline. And so kids want structure. They want to come in and to get better, right? Yeah. And so I think it starts off by setting the standard pretty early, right? So in our program, soccer is really good because it keeps kids accountable to more than just what they're doing on the field.
Right.
Right? They have to keep a 75 or above in the classroom, right?
Nice.
That's pushing kids to college. That's more than just saying, we want you to pass right now to plan our program, but we want you to pass in life and go further than this.
Right. And not everybody becomes a professional.
No. Yeah.
Right. So you gotta have a fallback plan.
100%. And I'll have kids call me from college and they'll be like, Coach Mauldin, I got to get a 75 or higher. And I'm like, you're exactly right. You do. Yeah. Exactly. And then it keeps them disciplined. We watch their social medias. And so that's something that's going to transfer into their jobs much later, in life because they know, I can't be posting that or I can't be doing that. Or else, there's going to be consequences. And kids, I think they want that structure more than we really notice.
Right.
So once you lay that foundation, then the fun comes, right? Because at the end of the day, all they want to do is play. And so we do a little rondo drill that the kids just absolutely love it. And they'll spend 20 minutes just having a blast. And then we get into, okay, it's down to work. And so the fun comes, by having a structure and expectations and standards that kids know, that are not going to change. And you build the fun into just playing the game, which is why they're here.
I think we see that in the classroom too. I know that there's teachers that, kids don't respect and don't really like, and they might even be some of the more fun teachers that just let them do whatever they want. Mm-hmm. And then, you come into one of our classrooms and there's structure and there's, we're expecting things from them, but we're also having a little bit of fun and they do the things, right? They tend to do those things more.
One of the things I'm wondering is, now both of my stepkids, they played sports, and I've had a lot of athletes come through the classroom, but I've also had a handful here over the last few years in particular where they've commented that mom and dad made it not fun. Mom and dad made it very much of a chore, not the coaches, not their teammates, and they were getting kind of burned out. So what can maybe we as parents do to help keep the fun in the sport, whether it's soccer or whatever they're doing?
Right. And I think, honestly, you speak to even a bigger issue is because what's happening now is parents are recognizing that they can get money for what their kids' talents. And so it becomes more of, how can I get my kid to college for this sport, instead of how do I get my kid to love this sport that I've asked them to play in, right? And so it's really, really hard to fight that as a coach, right? And so as a parent, for me, if I'm coaching a kid or if I'm, talking to my child, I'm asking them what are your long-term goals with this? Because if it's not to play in college, you can't force that on your kid. Because it just causes resentment in the long run, right? But if most kids do think they can play college soccer and they do want to do that. So I honestly say have that conversation with your kid in a way that's respectable. So if that's your goal for them, they think it's their idea. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Instead of being you have to do this, right? Because that never works out. In all of the years I've been doing this, I've more kids will go away from the sport when there's too much pressure from parent.
Well, of course, I think that's great for anything, right? Like, you don't want to be like, you're going to be a doctor, right? I mean, we got to find our own way in life, right? And that might be soccer, and it might be some other sport, or it might be, some other occupation. But, I think that extra pressure on the kids just gives extra anxiety.
Absolutely.
Right. And so we're adding to it.
So therefore, the benefits that they get are minimized then. So mom and dad, we can do a better job by just sitting in the stands and clapping and cheering and showing support rather than dictate and mandate.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it's a coach's job to coach, and it's a parent's job to encourage and love your child. We will handle the discipline, and we'll handle that on the back end. And if they want to play college, we'll get them there. But you got to support and encourage them along the way. So that's what they need from you, is what we see the most.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm curious about, like, given that, you've been coaching for a while, so you've probably run into a player who struggled with things like in personal life coming into the sport, and then kind of flourished. And maybe it even affected positively their personal life situation. Of course, without going into any specific details, I'm curious if you have any stories like that, or any kind of memorable experience that would be relatable to somebody.
I mean, there's a kid particularly that I'm thinking of, right? She didn't have a very good home life at all. And it was just really hard for her to get away from everything that was going on. And so the way that we handled it was, you just come in, and if you're having a bad day at home, you just look at me and say, hey, I'm having a bad day. And then she gets to come in. I know that as a coach, I don't have to put that extra pressure on her. She's just going to come in and play the sport. And the growth that we've seen in this particular kid it's been insane, right? And she'll probably go play Division I somewhere.
That's awesome.
She really, her and I have conversations, and she's like, well, you guys didn't force me to do this. You just let me come and be a part of the process with you.
Nice.
And so that's a life that was changed,
And do you find that the for kids that do have situations that they're struggling with outside of the sport, that the sport itself and the outlet of the physical activity really helps them? Yeah,
absolutely. We always tell kids this. I talk to kids about this in Hope Squad a lot. You have to have some sort of outlet to let go of the stress. And soccer it's a great one, right? But even, just going for a walk, or just going for a run, or doing something physical to get your mind off of what's really hurting you, normally will take the stress away, take the anxiety away, even if it's just for an hour on the field, right? I used to say, soccer was my world away from the world. And that's how a lot of kids feel.
And that makes a lot of sense. I mean, my wife, she really enjoys running. So when she's having a bad day, she can go for a run and she will come back much happier. I know other people that box, and they do boxing, and it relieves the stress for them. So certainly for kids, I think that running around and learning those skills can definitely help that. Well,
I'm glad she runs. I run to the bathroom. That's about it.
At least you make it.
Or is that not the type of running we're talking about here?
We don't want any specific stories.
Please leave that one out.
So, So what about, is it the right fit for, we talked a little bit about how, parents sometimes try to force their kids into it, but if I'm a student and I'm thinking about soccer, how would I know if that might be the right fit for me, especially coming in as a freshman, or maybe I've never played it before. Can you get into high school sports without having played it before? Is that tough?
I think it depends on where you're playing at. I think that's a really hard question to answer. Okay. I think it depends on,
So they probably want to start earlier.
You want to start earlier. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely.
And even
and that's good, because then they learn a lot of these things leading up to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. You definitely want to start your kids at a young age. In my opinion, kids should be playing everything and doing everything. And then as they grow up, then you start to dwindle it down, right?
Yeah.
Because then you find out what they love. You know, if you put a kid in piano lessons and you put her also in soccer, well, she loves piano lessons and she hates soccer. She should stick with piano. Like,
Sure,
it's just,
sure.
it is what it is. And so, you know, sometimes we see a lot of parents, if they played the sport, they want their kid to play the sport, but you got to meet your kid where they're at. And
Yeah.
no one's going to want to stay anything if they don't love it. So I say put them in everything young and then start to dwindle as they move up the ladder.
Yeah. That's good. So, and we talked a little bit about balancing sports and academics. I mean, you talked about the 75. I mean, the kids have to be able to do that. And then what about support at home? I mean, do these kids get enough sleep and like nutrition? I mean, do you guys support the nutrition programs at all? Or do you suggest things or? Yeah.
So, I mean, we definitely push, like, make sure you're hydrating every day. That's something that's really big. But we do a lot on the recovery side of things, especially because a lot of our kids are playing club sports. And so, you know, I remember in high school, I wasn't getting home till 11 and I was having to wake up at 6 a.m. for, you know, the next day and do it all over again.
How did you get your homework done?
It was really, really difficult. Yeah. It's really, I would do homework on the way to soccer practice.
Wow.
And then my mom would drive, and then I would come home and it would be 11 and I would go to bed and I'd wake up at 6 and then I have to do it all over again. So on one side, it's like, are kids getting enough sleep? My question is, how's their time management, right? Like, you're teaching these kids, are you managing your time? Are you getting your work done in the school day? Are you, you know, setting aside time to do homework, you know, 20 minutes each day instead of procrastinating.
And that's another life skill.
Absolutely.
Right. So we're adding to the other life skills that we've already talked about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it definitely, when your kids are in so many things, they have to learn how to manage their time, in order to succeed. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But on the like sleeping and nutrition side, when they get into college, a lot of colleges have, like nutritionists that will help them.
Okay.
And then something that we can do, like, we help a lot with the recovery side and the make sure you're drinking water and eating healthy and all those things. And I've had kids come ask me like, hey, how much of this should I be eating? And that's kind of a tough question to answer depending on the kid. But, you know, we can help point them in the right direction. Like, you probably shouldn't be eating 20 bags of candy, but maybe try an orange. That's good, you know? So.
I had an orange earlier today.
I did too.
Well, this has really been good.
Yeah.
I enjoy talking about, you know, we hear a lot about the value and benefit of sports. As a school teacher, we have seen a lot of the value and benefits. I love, you know, how when it's a kid is in their sports in season, how much more engaged they are when, you know, when playing time is on the line. Because you can tell when their sport is out of season, because boy, their attendance goes way down. Their give a hoot meter is right around 0. So but it is nice to have you come on and share with us, you know, a lot of the value, the benefits. Because a lot of times we can see the negatives. We can see the time suck. We can see the financial strain, the challenge that is on mom and dad getting you to all the different things that you've got to do. Right. But I think there's so much joy, you know, otherwise. I mean, granted, I've gone to so many different sporting events and to see the kids there, but more importantly, the parents and their schoolmates all in the stands clapping and cheering and chanting. It is fun to see and behold.
Yeah, I mean, that's the greatest part of the sport is joy.
Yeah.
And it's like, whether you're losing games or not, like if you're losing, you're with your best friends and you're losing. And if you're winning with your best friends. And you put so much into it that the joy that comes out of it, it definitely meets it. So that's probably the best part of the whole sport.
Yeah. It seems amazing. Like I said, I mean, I did drum corps, so I mean, I have some experience with that community side of things, and I'm, you know, I don't know what, it's almost 40 years on from that, and I'm still sort of friends with some of those people. So, you know, through Facebook, we don't all live near each other, so we're all over the world, really. But it's just it really is a different kind of a community, and so. definitely, I can see that with soccer and the joy and the shouting and the people who are cheering for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those are really good things.
Yeah.
That it's good for those students and those athletes to hear that. It definitely, I'm sure, helps them in their coping, especially if they're not doing well on the field, right? Like getting that support still is good. So yeah, this has been great. Like, I don't know if there's anything that we missed that you would want to mention, but
I don't think so.
we, if there is and you think of it, we'll just bring you back another time.
I would love that.
Or we'll talk about another aspect of it at some other point. But, I think the great things, right? The coping skills, the responsibility, the time management, the confidence building, the community building, the friendships that last, beyond the team that they happen to be on at the time. I think those are excellent things for the generation to learn.
Yes, it's stuff that we grew up knowing, but sometimes you don't understand and appreciate the value that really does have. So, Coach, thanks a lot for sharing all this stuff with us.
Yeah, it's so great.
Thank you guys so much for having me again.
Hey, you bet.
And you've definitely convinced me that soccer is a worthy sport to be watching.
Thank you.
I'm glad that FIFA's, coming to this direction.
World Cup in Dallas.
I know.
So it's going to be exciting.
Maybe they'll listen to our podcast and give us free tickets.
Oh, hey, all right. Go FIFA.
I mean, maybe. We'll send them the link.
Here's hoping.
We'll send them the link, definitely.
All right. Well, I guess then we're going to wrap this up. And so thanks again, Coach, for being with us. It's been a whole lot of fun. Always enjoy chatting it up with you. So I guess until next time, I'm Rod.
I'm Scott.
See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye.